Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
For this is what the Sovereign Lord says.
Why do you need prophets to tell people who you are and what you want?
If you can justify everything that the God of the Bible has done, then you can justify any of your behavior.
A lot of this mentality is trickling into what is now mainstream right-wing Christianity.
I am capable of empathy greater than this God of the Bible.
This is a Bible that they tell kids. This is the good Lord. This is the good book. He is fantasizing about murder, mass murder.
Head over to sacrilegiousdiscourse.com right now to find out how to leave us a review or support us on Patreon.
Hey there, sinners and saints. It's your favorite Bible-bashing duo from Sacrilegious Discourse, and we need your help.
That's right, folks. We're raising funds for some heavenly equipment and a studio that doesn't sound like it's in the depths of hell.
Our current setup, let's just say it's more apocalypse than audiophile.
So if you want to hear us dissect the Bible without the background noise of demonic squirrels, chip in a few bucks.
We're aiming for $5,000 to upgrade our audio and build a studio worthy of blasphemous banter.
Donate today and help us spread the good word of atheism.
You can find a link right on our homepage, sacrilegiousdiscourse.com. Every dollar counts.
Even if it's from your collection plate. Husband,
Wife,
do you know what we're doing today?
well, we're getting into the end of a book, I believe.
We're finishing Zechariah.
We are.
It's a wrap-up.
It is. This is a wrap-up. And I assume we're going to wrap the fuck up out of Zechariah.
Yes. Yeah. Bye, Zeki.
You got some good stuff for us today?
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, you ready to go on and get into this then?
I'm ready to go on and get into this then.
Let's do it.
Okie dokie. Right, so we are going to talk about fucking Zechariah.
Okay.
And in putting together this overview of the chapter, or of the book, that is, we took so long to read this book that I forgot some of the shit that had happened.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so I was like, I forgot. So, okay, the author is the dude, Zechariah, well, hypothetically.
For part of it, maybe.
Part of it, yeah. He's the son of Berechiah, grandson of Iddo, and he was likely both a priest and a prophet.
Okay.
And remember, we did a special over, aren't all
what's
the
a priest and what's
priests?
a prophet? What the fuck?
Yeah. Well, the priest is like the governmenty side of things.
Yeah.
And then the prophet is like the I declared that God spoke through me, and so
maybe I do drugs and see visions.
Right. So they were outside the institution, and they may have served a purpose, but the priests don't think so. So
right.
Zechariah sees the end of the whole prophet.
I feel
thing.
like the priesthood put Zechariah up to the gig. They're like, hey, you're part of the priesthood. We're gonna let you do this prophet thing, but you got to put an end to it, man.
Yeah. You get to be the last one.
Although the end of the priesthood shit didn't come until the other people that were writing it were writing. So that's, questionable too.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah. This dude was active post-Babylonian exile during Persian rule under the reign of Darius the First. So around 520 BCE.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was in Jerusalem, and it's the time the second temple is being rebuilt.
Okay. All right.
Zechariah began to prophesy just 2 months after Haggai.
Okay.
Yeah. So they work alongside each other under Zerubbabel and Joshua. Remember High Priest Joshua?
Yes.
And Zerubbabel was the governor.
Right.
So they work together under those two to encourage the temple's completion.
Oh, okay. All right.
The themes of this book are repentance, restoration, divine justice, messianic prophecy, and hardcore apocalyptic vision.
Yes,
to the max.
But again, this was in the later shit mostly. Well, no. There was some pretty hardcore visions in the first 8 chapters.
Yeah, the visions were in the first 8 chapters.
That's right.
And then chapters 9 through 14. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the structure, okay?
Okay.
Chapters 1 through 8, as I just said, they were written in relatively structured Hebrew with dated oracles and specific historical markers.
Okay. Yeah.
So those 8 chapters together are often referred to as First Zechariah.
Sure.
Because we're pretty sure either he or his
disciples
or somebody who collectively referred to themselves as Zechariah wrote it. And that's 8 nights of apocalyptic visions, exhortations, and dated oracles and prophecies.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, chapters 9 through 14 have a very obvious shift in linguistic style, and that's what you were alluding to.
Yeah, yeah.
It's more poetic,
I suppose.
Dark poetry, like, fire and brimstone poetry.
Right.
It's undated, and there's an abrupt voice change. Like, you can tell the difference.
Oh, yeah. No, it was night and day.
Yeah. It suggests the possible different authorship or even editorial layers. We're going to take the suggestion of possible right out because scholars pretty much agree.
Yeah, I was going to say probable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This split is recognized by Jewish and secular scholars alike. And there, to me, since it's the Old Testament is Hebrew.
Yeah.
I don't care that the Christians included in their little Bible.
Right.
It belongs to the Jewish people. They're the ones who wrote it, and therefore they get to say, like, I'm going to take their opinion on the matter before I'll take a Christian opinion on the matter.
Yeah.
Because the Christians half of them don't even recognize the Old Testament or read the Old Testament. Other
than a few snippets that they want to pull out every now and again. And let's be honest, they usurp the Old Testament for their own purposes. Mm-hmm. And it's not, they don't really care about the ins and outs of it. They're just like, our God, Jesus, meets the requirements of all that stuff before, and therefore that's why Jesus is God.
They only care insofar as they like to say that the Old Testament proves the New Testament.
Which is very questionable, too, because...
it's not questionable. Yeah. It's ridiculous and childish.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's like anything. Like if we were to write something today, mm-hmm. and it was just full of falsehoods and bullshit and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then somebody, like, 2 years from now referenced what we wrote and said, it's all true because this all came true. Don't you see? It's true now because this is true. Just true. Just true it. It's trued.
It's trued. I feel like that's something Trump would say. I have so many opinions on it. And, like, the more that I read the Old Testament, the less respect that I have, what little there was, for Christians as a whole.
Sure.
Just the whole religion of Christianity. I'm like, because their religion is supposed to be based on this, and they didn't read it. They didn't read it. So
regardless, but it's just you have to take so many fantastical things and layer them on top of each other and assume that they're all true.
Yeah,
like that's where you have to start to begin mm-hmm. to believe that Jesus is real and that is God and that God's real and all that, all the things. Mm-hmm. It's just layer after layer after layer of falsehoods and misreadings and misinterpretations that all end up being what is now Christianity. And it's such a long walk to get there and believe those things based on what we've been reading.
Yeah.
I can't even remotely get close to coming to saying, well, maybe. That's not even something in my mind.
It's not even something like I can't even say like, okay, I disagree, but I see how you got there and I can respect that. No, that is not any way a part of me at all.
Right.
Like, no. And toward that, like, I can't even start to talk about the Jewish faith because to me it kind of doesn't matter because it's not Jewish people forcing the laws onto others. Like, they're not the ones in the Supreme Court taking away Roe v. Wade. They're not the ones
I'm going to push back a little bit on that because of everything that's going on in the Middle East right now. But that's a different, and I'm not blaming like Jewish people. I'm blaming the government that's in charge right now.
Yeah, but even at that, they're utilizing the Jewish people as a tool. They're not. It's but still,
that's the same things happen. I mean, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The same thing's happening here. Our government is using us as tools, right. Like, and they're using Christianity to further their agendas, and that's the exact same thing that's currently happening in Israel, right?
Right. Okay.
And so I'm just saying, like, it is very applicable, I think, even in this day and age, to talk about Judaism as bad and wrong too.
Yes, but Judaism in and of itself, like, I don't really have big beef with. I have Judaism as it's being utilized by Christians and by people who are throwing it around and Zionists,
that's exactly, generally I'm not even going to say that because there's a lot of very hardline Jewish people in the United States as well. But the Jewish people that we generally interact with are very light on religion, right? And they're more studious than anything.
Or it's more cultural and and traditional than it is like, let's use this to get into power and, knock down 100 years of American law precedent.
But I think you're looking at this from a very United States point of view.
Oh, definitely.
So I'm not trying to, talk you out of what you're saying. I'm just saying that I think that there are people that would very much disagree with what you're saying.
No, you know what? I'm really glad that you said that. That is a very fair point. I am coming at this from a very myopic view because I am in America and I am.
You're looking at what's affecting us right now.
Yeah.
Here, right now. And that's a fair point of view to have.
But it does bear noticing and admitting that, but this is just one perspective.
Right.
And
we are not the whole world, no matter how much we,
no, definitely.
think we might be.
Definitely not. So thank you for bringing me back for a minute.
Sure.
So that was First Zechariah, chapters 1 through 8.
Yeah.
Okay. Chapters 9 through 14 have that shift that I talked about, and the split is very recognized by Jewish and secular scholars alike.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
It's referred to as Second Zechariah because there are two undated messianic oracles about the end times in it, and it's just so unlike the first 8 visions.
Right.
They were composed by later authors.
Obviously.
Yeah. And even at that, Second Zechariah is often assumed to be a composite itself of many different authors. Some scholars further split Second Zechariah again into chapters 9 through 11 and then 12 through 14.
I think we briefly touched on that when we were going through it.
We did. And then the first half of Second Zechariah would be Deutero Zechariah.
Yeah.
And then that last half would be called Trito Zechariah. So instead of First and Second Zechariah, we'd have First Deutero and Trito.
Got it.
Okay.
First, second, third.
Yeah.
I mean, just to make it simple.
No, right. Totally. This book is important from a Jewish and historical critical view that messianism and apocalypticism were not monolithic. This layering of these different views and schools of thought, it reflects an evolving post-exilic thought process and what their hopes were and where their fears lay.
Well, yeah, and we talked about a lot of that as we were going through this. They're surrounded by enemies. They've been conquered. They've been thrown about. They've been, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for them.
Yeah.
And there's many things, even when they're in good times, that they can see pending that might be going wrong soon. Yeah. It's not a great time for them as a people.
Zechariah is more a book written by and for a people having come through a trauma that they're still enduring.
Yeah.
More that than it is looking forward.
Sure. No, and I wish we could look at it from that vantage point as a worldly society
from Judaism instead of Christianity.
From a secular society, from a society that has moved past all of this crap.
Well,
like that
Judaism does view it that way, just so you know.
Sure. No,
I think
a lot of them do. I'm not going to say 100% of them do, because there's different sects of Judaism as well that are out there.
But as a whole, Judaism in general views this book not as a forward-thinking,
right,
like a Messiah is coming to save us. Most of them view it as, the scholars view it as just
a reference of the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Zechariah is read as a prophetic book of return, restoration, and hope for a renewed national and spiritual future centered around Jerusalem and the temple. So like rah, let's try to get our peeps back together. Let's build up the team again.
Yeah.
But the Christians interpret many passages, especially that Trito area, the last 3 chapters, as messianic prophecies.
No, you don't say.
That are fulfilled in Jesus. Jesus.
That writers took and stole heavily from the very last 3 to 5 prophets.
Yeah, like it makes me want to gag. I mean, it's so like every note that I read, like I haven't even read the New Testament yet, but all the notes that I read that are like, and this is quoted in Matthew, and this is quoted in such and such, and I'm just like, please let me barf. Like we are going to be coming back to Zechariah for a large portion of the first several books of the Old Testament, of the New Testament, I mean. Yeah, no,
and I think that, what happened, they're like, hey, they're going to get to the end of this. Let's make all this shit come true. And then we'll be, this shows that this is going to be real. This makes this legitimate, I
mean, it's so obvious that it was a political grab that I don't even understand how somebody can look at this and not know that.
I don't know of a specific source to point people to, but there are a lot of discussions about how, Romans used Christianity as a tool to promote, political and power grabs and things like that at the time. Like and I don't know, I might not even be saying that correctly, but I'm just saying that even at the time Christianity was forming, there were powers using it for certain gains.
You mean like things. There are today?
Yeah.
Go figure.
No, you can't have religion, I think, in a vacuum. Religion is tied to power, and it always will be.
Right. So. And that's why I strongly try to differentiate between personal growth and spirituality as a feeling versus any kind of religion or faith in a higher power, or like what some people call like the creator or what the fuck ever.
No, when I hear you say you have a religion and you go to a church, I hear I chose a political party and I support that political party.
Right.
That's essentially what it is.
Exactly.
Like that. It's just you might as well just we might as well not even distinguish between the two, basically.
Right. I mean, I was talking to my mom about this because she was like trying to get me to. I'm not quite sure what she was trying to get me to say.
Yeah.
But it was something to the effect of I don't understand why people who are Republicans and Democrats can't get along. Like I keep reading about how they, family members are.
Your mom said this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, I go, Mom, you and Dad are the only Republicans in my life. And at that, it's only because you and I make great pains to try to make this relationship work. Right. And if you weren't my mom and I wasn't your daughter, this would not happen. And she was like, why? And I was like, because
how many liberal friends do you have? Mom.
You can't ask a question like that because then she would be like, oh, I don't ask people about their politics, blah, 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 blah.
No, you just associate with people that you already know are on your side, though.
Right. And I said, that's kind of what I said. I go, Mom, to me, when somebody tells me that they are a Republican, what that tells me is that generally speaking, they are anti-abortion, anti-choice, that they don't care for allowing programs that help, like social programs that help people in need.
Right.
That, they are war hawks, generally speaking.
Well, that's questionable
That's
anymore.
questionable anymore, but that conversation happened prior to all of this. They're super, super de-duper gun happy.
Yeah.
They love the cops and think that racism doesn't exist.
Right.
Except for when the cops are defending somebody and then they'll beat them with a flag. On September or January 6th.
Right. Yeah.
So Mom, when you tell me, every single one of those points is something that goes against my value system. Mm-hmm. So how could I walk into a relationship on purpose with those as your values? I'm stuck with you. You're my mom.
Yeah.
And I want us to be able to come to some way to be able to have dinner together, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very selfish of me. I'm very privileged to be able to do that. If I were maybe a better person or a different person, I would just take a stand and say, that's that. But at the end of the day, I do want a relationship with my mom.
Sure.
So,
sure.
And by mom, I mean my mom and dad. But,
yeah.
But my mom is the one that I have these conversations with.
Right.
So
right.
I don't know how we got off on that. But anyway, Zechariah chapter 1. Okay. In the first part, there was a call to repentance. And there's an acknowledgement that Israel's history that Israel has a history of ignoring prophets.
Yeah.
And there's a big reminder of past failures and threat of exile and all kinds of shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into the first vision, okay? The 4 horsemen among myrtle trees, divine surveillance of nations, and an angel intercedes for Jerusalem.
Okay.
Okay, we hear God's anger at nations that, quote unquote, went too far.
Yeah.
He was like, I said you could beat them up, but I didn't say you could beat them up that hard.
Which is such a bunch of crap.
I know.
What?
I used them as tools, but then the tools got a little unwieldy.
Did he send a fucking memo? Hey, I'm done using you as a tool.
Right?
To stop now.
Well, it's like he's saying, and I read a quote about this earlier that he's using them as tools, but he's just basically letting them do what they want to do, but he's not happy about it. He's not rewarding them. He's still going to punish them for wanting to do it.
But when they've gone too far, isn't it possible that he could just start, punishing them then?
Or he could
instead of letting them go too far?
Not do it in the first fucking place.
I mean, that would be the better option in total for me. But, I mean, he does and says that he can punish people.
Yeah.
But yet lets people go too far.
Yeah. So
which is it, man?
He let them go too far, and he's mad at them that they did the thing that he let them do.
Yeah. Were you busy with the Martians that day or something? Or what happened?
Yeah. He was on a different continent. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he promises restoration. He's like, sorry, guys, I let them get a little rough with you. I'm going to restore you. Mm-hmm. This vision was given about 2 months after they had recommenced the building of the temple.
Okay. All right.
Some Jewish commentators connect the myrtle trees to the Book of Esther because Hadassah means myrtle, and that's a word that is used in the Hebrew text, I guess. And they associate this vision with peaceful restoration under Persian favor.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's not the way that when you read it from an apologist perspective, that's not the way it comes out.
Definitely
so
not.
I appreciated having these alternate perspectives.
Right.
So then comes in the same chapter, we're still in chapter 1, we get a second vision. Okay, so we had the 4 horsemen and the myrtle trees, and those guys' job is to survey the nation.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we get 4 horns, and they represent enemy nations and oppressive empires, and 4 craftsmen. And these dudes represent divine agents to overthrow those powerful nations.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
From the Jewish perspective, these are symbolic of divine justice and reassurance to the returning exiles. From a Christian perspective, there's little divergence here between the two in early versions, but it is often allegorized as spiritual warfare or apocalyptic foretelling, like get an early taste of what's to come. Like they're so thirsty for it, you know?
Right.
Okay. So then we move on to chapter 2, measuring Jerusalem. Remember that? There's a man.
We've measured things so often. I can't,
know.
I can't keep track of all the measuring moments, but
this is actually, we've talked about it more than once, but this is the only time that we've actually taken a measure stick to our dick. Okay.
I was talking about like the measuring of like the tabernacle and the ark and
got it.
The measuring, there was a measuring of one of the.
Well, they provided the measures to us.
Yeah.
In this, we aren't provided the measures. But there is a man walking around measuring.
I'm just saying there's a lot of measuring in the Bible.
There really is. They were big on numbers.
They like their rulers.
They like their numerology.
Those yardsticks are awesome.
So we get our third vision here, and it's a man with a measuring line. Jerusalem is going to grow without walls, and God is going to be the protector, since the walls won't be there to protect them.
Yeah.
And that's actually a big fucking deal. Okay. The idea that Jerusalem will be without walls but still protected was super radical for the time.
Oh.
Ancient cities relied on their walls for protection.
Well, sure.
So
walls are pretty,
they keep
useful.
Keep people out. Right. Build the wall, right? Yeah. So here, God is promising an invisible security, like brickless security.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a theological ideal that you're supposed to have faith in over military strength.
Okay. All right.
This idea may reflect Persian policy promoting demilitarized but loyal provinces.
So, like, Persia was probably like, hey, you can't build a wall.
Right.
Like, we're not going to allow that shit.
Yeah, like, we were letting you guys have your little cute religion back, but you're not going to build walls. We're going to come and go as we fucking please.
Right.
Like, within reason, guys.
So the religion said, well, that's all right. We don't need walls. We have God.
We have God.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. Like, you can see the conversation, right?
Sure.
Like, how are we going to spin this? Okay,
yeah.
okay, I got it. God is on our side.
Yeah.
We don't need no stinking walls, right? In chapter 2, verses 6 through 13, there's a call for exiles to return from Babylon.
Okay.
God promises to dwell among his people and says that many nations will join.
Yeah, okay? I remember that.
Yeah. Now, the Jewish people emphasize the future prominence of Jerusalem as a spiritual and political center. That's how they read this chapter.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Christian take is some interpret God dwelling in their midst as foreshadowing Christ's incarnation. Because they're like the indwelling of Jesus. Jesus dwells within. Jesus within us. Jesus in. Jesus is inside.
Yeah.
Jesus is a penis entering my vagina.
A lot of fucking heavy lifting.
Inside me. Get inside me. I need you inside me. What?
A lot of heavy lifting that goes on for these thoughts.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you see how if you just say things.
Just word cloud and mud, it can come back to whatever you want it to, which I'm a child, so I made it about sex. Yeah, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. See how I did that? Right. Yeah. Okay. So chapter 3, we got Joshua the high priest. Remember him? I do. Okay. So here we get our fourth vision. Okay. And this is where, hi, Satan. What? Remember? He steps in and we're like, when did Satan enter the chat? Right. But not as like a devilly dude with like a twirly mustache and evil. No. He's just like a guy. He's just like a lawyer. Satan does not mean the same thing in the Old Testament as it does to Christians. Right. So
he's an accuser. Right. He's just an arguey guy. Yeah. So Satan accuses high priest Joshua because Joshua's got dirty clothes on. He's like, oh, you're so gross. Right. How do you even dare talk to God? You yuck. God rebukes Satan. I rebuke thee, Satan. Yeah. Satan, get behind me. Right, I rebuke thee. Yeah. Yeah. Remember how I like
it doesn't stop Christians, like I said, from usurping things. No. Because they love that.
But I had a ball with that because I didn't realize that was like an actual in the Bible phrase.
Right. Let alone the Old Testament.
Yeah. So that was
kind
fun.
of hit us out of left field there.
No, that was fun for me. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So God rebukes Satan and Joshua is vindicated.
Mm-hmm.
Vindicated. That's a good song, actually. He restores Joshua with clean garments. Here's some clean undies.
Yeah.
Now go get cleaned up, baby. His filthy garments are replaced, symbolizing national and priestly purification. As you pointed out, Satan as accuser here is not yet a cosmic devil figure.
Right.
He's not just the evil guy. Okay. In the Jewish view, he's more like a prosecuting attorney in God's court. And they reference God's court.
Yeah.
Or the heavenly court. Like they talk about it quite often.
Yeah.
This legalistic depiction predates later Christian demonology.
I think they were very big on legal aspects because they talked a lot about how to deal with money and deal with indentured servants or slaves. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like there was a lot of rules that they covered.
The book of God is literally called the law.
Right.
The Torah, the law.
And that's generally how I come to think of early religion is that it was just law before law.
Yeah.
You know, like this is how we maintain order. This is how we
social.
Sure.
This is how we be a civilized people who only kill sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard to bring people that are so sparsely populated in an area, and compared to today, they lived miles apart, or even hundreds of miles apart. So how do you bring them all together under one rule? You say, well, this will happen to you if you don't do this.
It's basically like one might say it's their constitution. They all come together and they're like, yeah, we agree that this is going to be the rules.
Sure.
This is the law.
Yeah.
It's not democratic. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm not saying that it's written by we the people. I mean, it is written by we the people, but not all the people.
Yeah.
It's written by like a couple guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's written by more than a couple of guys, but yeah.
Still, some dudes.
It's written by people in power who want to, hold on to power.
Right.
Is what it's written by.
Right. And also, I want to give credit where credit is due, and who also want to maintain some kind of sense of order.
Yeah, if we looked at this in the sense of what it actually accomplished, and that's like bringing societies together and bringing cultures order and some sense of national pride that furthered humanity in those times and in that place, it could be looked at as a very forward-thinking idea and has its place in history. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But it's not history, it's current because of how it has just come through the ages, and now we're still dealing with the fallouts of this shit because people actually believe it.
I know. That's the problem. It's not, it's a mixed problem because it's not just that people still believe it. It's also that people in leadership, like fucking Reagan, people who, all them guys, right? Like
Trump loves to pull religion into God. It just to
God bless God. I love God. Right. God is God.
You just have to check the box.
Right.
There's not, as long as you say God, I've heard people say some of the most heinous things and they tack God onto it, and then all of a sudden people are like, well, it's God, so we're good.
And I want what he's doing. So, well, of course he's a flawed man. I mean, nobody's
we're all flawed. That's what Jesus was for. God chose imperfect men. And I'm like, God chose a dude that said, grab him by the pussy? Yeah. Really? That you are trying to tell me that you're God. I'm speechless because I'm just like, that's the God you're behind. Yeah.
The God that is okay with grabbing by the pussy Trump.
Yeah.
The guy that has been divorced multiple times, is obviously racist, just a terrible human being. He's a rapist. He's a pedophile. He's just a terrible human being. He's a terrible human being.
Right.
That's your man. And you just think God, he chose an imperfect. Okay. Well, then I cannot respect you or your God. Anyway. Yeah. So then we've got prophetic promise. Joshua and the priests symbolize the coming of a mysterious figure that they refer to as the branch.
Right. Yeah.
And sin will be removed in just one day whenever this happens. Okay. So in the Jewish perspective, the branch refers maybe to a future Davidic leader, possibly Zerubbabel or an idealized messianic figure. Okay.
When I recall, I think we talked about it, maybe even doesn't refer to that. It might even just be metaphoric, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to get to that in just a second.
Sure.
Yeah. Christians obviously identify the branch is Jesus.
Obviously.
Everything is Jesus.
Yeah.
The removal of sin in a single day is seen as Christ's crucifixion.
Because
obviously. But the branch could also be a symbolic name, like a title, because it's been used in other prophetic books ambiguously, not necessarily as a messianic term.
Right.
So, like, it just
lean
that direction.
That you remember Waco back in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. They called their branch Davidians, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if it was I wonder if Branch and David had anything to do with like that name.
I literally was just thinking that, and I have no idea. I couldn't even tell you.
No, I just it literally why did Waco pop into my head just now? But it did.
Because
Branch and David.
Because you hear Branch and you can't help but think Branch Davidian.
I mean, if you're old like me, yeah. So.
I mean, or me. I mean, yeah.
But I'm just curious, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, that might be a special sometime.
We'll see.
If it's worth it.
If it's worth it.
Yeah.
Who cares? Branch, blah. Chapter 4, Zerubbabel and the lampstand.
Yeah.
Remember the lampstand? This is where
weird.
The visions got even weirder.
This is where I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. So we're at vision number 5.
Okay.
Okay, for those keeping score at home.
Yeah.
There's a golden lampstand with 2 olive trees, and this symbolizes divine empowerment and encouragement for Zerubbabel's rebuilding task. Okay. And then Zerubbabel's going to finish the temple. So the 2 olive trees equal 2 anointed ones. And this is often interpreted to represent Zerubbabel as governor and Joshua as high priest, which prefigures the Messiah's dual roles, whoever the Messiah might be.
Sure.
Right?
Sure, yeah.
That he will wear both hats, the governorship and the high priest.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and they were trying to, the governor was not allowed to wear a crown because of Persia or whatever was going on. Mm-hmm. So they were trying to bring some power back into the whole, the seat of Israel, right? Like that's why the priest was allowed to wear a crown. And that's why, they were doing some heavy lifting here with regard to imagery for their people that were in power.
Right. So, and without pissing off the actual leadership of Persia.
Yeah.
So the Jewish people read this to mean that the olive trees represent civil and religious leadership working in harmony. No more, no less. Just the 2 work together. The end.
Hence olive branch.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Christians, of course, apply this to the 2 witnesses that are referenced in the Book of Revelation, chapter 11.
Of course they do.
Because there's 2 witnesses, apparently. But I haven't read the Book of Revelation, so I'm like, what that means.
From what I understand, it shouldn't even be in there. But,
probably. So, moving on to chapter 5.
Yeah.
We've got a fucking pizza roll scroll and wickedness removed on a flying carpet.
Yeah.
I can show you the world. You know that one?
Yes, I do. I know.
That was Aladdin.
Right.
Because they're on the flying carpet.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here we get visions 6 and 7.
Okay. Yeah.
Vision 6, the flying scroll represents God's judgment on thieves and oath breakers.
Sure.
Okay. Yep. And it's giant.
It is.
For everybody to be able to read it.
It's fucking huge.
Yeah.
And it's flying, I think. It was like flying across the sky.
Mm-hmm. A flying roll scroll.
A scroll, yeah.
And it's 2-sided. It's double-sided.
Right.
They print it on both sides.
Which I had questions about because I'm like, how did they read the other side?
It was standing straight up. It wasn't laying down. It's vertical.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I was imagining it fly. Because I mean, if
you
it's
were
flying,
imagining it doing like a flyover.
Well, if a scroll roll, whatever, the whole fucking scroll is flying somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that aerodynamics would mean that it would have to be kind of like flat,
be horizontal.
So that's how I imagined it. But yeah, you're right. It could be straight up and down.
No, it was totally up and down.
And it could like spin around, maybe even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you really wanted to like highlight it, you could have like flames coming out from the bottom, that like to the sides, and just like, hey, look at me.
And some alarms, auga, auga, with the giant eyeballs popping out, right?
I gotta say, if that flew through town, I might stop and pay attention to that.
I would definitely stop and pay attention, and I would even go so far as to maybe re-examine my life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right, so that was the flying scroll roll.
Yeah.
The pizza roll.
Right.
Okay, so then vision number 7 is a woman in an ephah, which is a basket.
Yeah.
Representing wickedness. Remember, her name is Wickedness.
Yeah, as I recall, there was a lead lid, and they flew her off to Babylon.
Yeah, they did. They sent her off to Shinar, which is Babylon.
Right.
And thus sin was removed from Jerusalem.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Just
right?
A basket and a woman in it.
Bitch in a basket.
And a lead basket. Or a lead lid, I mean. Yep.
I mean, we got Build-A-Bear and bitch in a basket.
That does the trick right there.
The woman named, quote unquote, Wickedness in the basket may be a veiled critique of female-coded idolatry, which some scholars link to Asherah worship. Which makes sense because since Shinar is Babylon, the woman being returned there is a symbol of removing cultural political contamination.
Okay.
Like Asherah poles.
But okay.
But these people have had
I was going to say, Asherah poles have been around since like way back in the Bible.
But they're like, but we got it from them though.
Yeah, but they also forgot that they never actually left Egypt. They were always in their area. Right. And that they're relatives, even close relatives to the Canaanites. Yeah. But hey, who are we to judge? It's just short cultural memory thing seems to be a
who
theme
are we to
in
judge? Just people whose laws are being impacted by people who still read this shit.
Right.
Yeah. So the Jewish take on this is that wickedness is exiled, which purges the land of impurity and idolatry. So it's pretty
sounds like we don't need Jesus,
right?
It's good. We're good to go.
That's what I think.
You just need a basket and a lead lid and a woman in it, and we don't need Jesus.
Now Christians often interpret this to be linked to Mystery Babylon in Revelation, in the Book of Revelation. Apparently,
Babylon.
Apparently, there's a reference to Mystery Babylon. I have no idea what that means. Okay, but I'm like, I don't care because I'm over the New Testament. I haven't even read it yet, and I'm over it because it's faker than fake.
Well, it's all built on some idea of fulfilling every goddamn prophecy in the Old Testament. Yeah, and
somebody picked up a book of Roman myths and legends, and then was like, and this came true, and that came true, and I'm gonna make this one be this, and I'm like. No,
it's the sequel that no one asked for.
Yeah, you can't do that. That's not how that works. That's literally not how that works. And they're like, hold my beer, bitch.
Right. Well, I mean, when somebody makes a sequel and it's done poorly, it's so fucking bad, right?
Or like a reboot.
Yeah. Ugh. Because they try way too hard, right?
Mm-hmm. Or they don't try at all.
Well, yeah.
One or the other.
One or the other. But I feel like this is one of those sequels that tried too hard. They're like, hey, everything in that fucking Old Testament, especially the stuff at the end. Let's just make sure it all fits in. We're gonna get all the highlights. Okay?
Yeah, just pick some of the big words.
This guy's gonna be bigger than David, man. Like he's the new Messiah guy. We're gonna make him.
We're gonna make a Messiah.
We're gonna make him all that and a lead-filled basket with a woman. Whatever.
Just make it happen.
Better than a roll.
Better than a pizza roll.
Scroll roll.
Yeah. All right, so then we move on to chapter 6.
Okay.
And we get vision 8.
Okay. Yeah.
4 chariots, divine agents, are sent different directions to patrol the earth. Remember, I had a whole thing about that? Yeah. And I was like, let me tell you which directions they're going and why I think it.
Right.
Because we have Gog and Magog happening up north, right? Yeah. God's spirit is satisfied in the north. Okay. And then Joshua is symbolically crowned as priest king with silver and gold. And this foreshadows the coming Messiah, the branch.
Right? According to Christians.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So get this.
I'm getting.
2 crowns were originally made, but only one was used. Some manuscripts say crowns plural, others singular. This reflects a textual tension. Was there supposed to be one Messiah or 2, a king and a priest? Some Dead Sea Scroll sects expected 2 Messiahs, which could come from some of the translation confusion like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we will have a whole, we're going to dive at some point into textual translation issues because there are so many translations and so many ways to, it's one thing to say that this is the word of God. It's another thing to say it and understand that it has been translated tens of thousands of times and through different languages and different cultures and different.
And it's one thing even to say that. I've said that all my life. Yeah, sure. It's been translated over and over and over again.
Yeah,
that's just obvious that there's going to be mess ups.
Right.
But I hadn't internalized it because I hadn't read it yet and seen what the fuck those mess ups are and how it changes the entire goddamn text. Yeah. There's knowing it and then there's, oh shit, seeing it.
No, and then at some point, if you're actually looking into all this shit, you realize that the most popular Bible in the United States, the King James Version, is basically just written by the Scooby-Doo gang.
Yeah.
What? That fucking... What? Who wrote that?
And Christians are so excited about it because it reads like thee, thou, thou, thy.
Right, yeah.
And they're like, I love Shakespeare. And then it's like, but you don't. You don't love Shakespeare. You don't love Shakespeare and you don't love King James because he was gay. He was a flaming homo. You don't love him.
Right.
You hate everything about this Bible except this Bible.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, it's
literally
crazy.
Doesn't make sense.
It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah. All right, so the Jewish take on this is that it symbolizes hope for unified priestly and political leadership, which, we said that before, the two getting along in harmony.
Yeah.
Joshua's coronation honors the spiritual office, not a political claim. Okay.
Right, but it did have something to do with politics because they wanted to have that leadership role shown for their own people.
I feel like the Jewish take today when they read this has to have a little bit of so Christians chillax. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I think that everything that they say when they read this, has to have that as the rest of the sentence. That's not what we meant. That's not what it said. So Christians chillax.
Right.
That should just be the name of a fucking book, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So obviously, the Christians view this as a foreshadowing of Jesus as both priest and king. He gets to wear all the crowns.
Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 7, hypocrisy and fasting. Okay, delegates.
Yeah.
Delicate delegates question whether to continue exile-era fasts commemorating Jerusalem's destruction. They're like, is that even correct now? Should we still do that? Because we're rebuilding it. And
the answer is weird. Yes, you should do it if you mean it. Or don't do it if you don't mean it.
I never asked you to do it in the first fucking place.
Right.
So, no, stupid.
Right.
God rebukes...
Well, he did. That's right, he didn't.
No, this was a man-made holiday.
That's right.
Yeah, to not wallow, but they were like a remembrance.
Sure.
It was not God-made.
Yeah.
God did not ordain that.
No, that's right. I forgot.
Yeah. God rebukes hollow rituals and challenges their motives. Were they fasting for him or themselves? He said that they were wallowing.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, probably. So that's why we're asking if we still need to. And he's like, I never made you do it in the first place, asshole.
Yeah, but whatever. I mean, he's such a if you're to believe in God, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's such a dick to his people.
Yeah.
So for them to be like, are we supposed to be doing this still?
To me, it's like, good job on asking.
It's a fair question, I think.
Oh, you're a good asker. I like good questions.
I don't want to be murdered. Do you want to be murdered?
No. Not today.
Especially by a petty ass little fucking piece of shit God who thinks that, you better do what he wants even though he doesn't tell you.
Right.
I mean, yeah, if I got somebody that I can ask that question to and he talks to God, I'm going to be like, hey, dude, are we supposed to be doing this?
God is like the king of all questions are stupid. You should already know the answer.
Yeah.
And the people are like, I just want to not get smited.
Yeah, and if I knew the answer, it would be because you told me, which you don't tell me, so that's why I don't know.
Right. You be out here telling all these prophets, and they're all saying different things.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to get the straight cheese. I just want the good answer.
Right, yeah.
if you would like to tell me, I'll be a prophet.
Sure.
And I'll just...
I welcome God to talk directly to me.
Yeah.
And then I will tell our listeners that God talked to me. But he didn't.
Question...
And he won't.
Like, if either of us came to the microphone going, guys, I got something to tell you. Like, I have a feeling that...
Look, it would have to start with a giant scroll roll flying over our house.
I mean...
That's the only way that we could start that episode.
Like, I don't think you would believe me, and I sure as fuck wouldn't believe you.
Right, no.
And I don't think any of our listeners that, like, we interact with on Discord would believe either of us. So there's that. So God calls for justice, kindness, mercy, and obedience, not ritual.
Sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Disobedience led to exile. Remember? Yeah.
Right.
So the Jewish take on this is it's a classic prophetic critique. Ethical living trumps rote observance.
Sure.
You know, duh.
And we've covered that multiple times in the Old Testament too.
Exactly.
Even when it comes down to sacrificing things, they were like, well, only if you mean it.
Yeah.
But, we're supposed to do that. Just only if you mean it, though.
Which is why I really have problems with all of the loopholes that they find to get around their no electricity or no work on the Sabbath or whatever.
I love those things.
I
love those things because it shows how ridiculous this stuff is.
I don't like them because they make me uncomfortable in that, why am I respecting this more than you do? That you're not doing that correctly. Sure. According to your faith, which says right here, don't do just rote observance.
Yeah.
Ethical living is the thing.
Well, you know how we have Sunday Christians here. I'm sure there's Saturday Jews there.
I know. But it bugs me the same. Right. It chaps my ass either way when people are practicing their religion hardcore and they're practicing it wrong.
Right.
Like, dude, this is the simple shit. This is just the basic on the surface stuff. Like, I don't know all the ins and outs, but if I can't even trust you to get the simple shit right, why the fuck am I going to trust you to get the deep stuff?
I mean, just think about it. You remember that guy that in the back in the time of Moses or whatever, and he picked up sticks on Sunday and he died?
Yeah.
Just think if he had like a robotic, picking up stick machine that he could have started on, Friday or something.
Friday night.
And then he could let it run into Saturday. He could have picked up those sticks and not died. Yeah. The Bible would be completely different.
I know, it's true.
It's just he didn't have enough technology. That's all.
That is actually 100% true. If only androids.
Right.
And
they could have lit those fucking incense for, Aaron's sons. And then they'd still be, they wouldn't still be alive, but, they wouldn't have died.
Right. And then Aaron wouldn't be told, don't cry for your fuckwad son.
Yeah. We could have a whole different book here.
I know.
It's just God didn't give him enough technology early enough to beat his idiotic ideas.
Or imagine if they chased the sun. Like if you run the direction correctly. Mm-hmm. Like like an airplane goes through time zones, right?
Yeah, but I was imagining somebody running, and I'm like, that's not going to work.
No, but like, let's say that there is a possibility that they could ride an animal or what the fuck ever fast enough, right? That they are literally beating the sun. They're ahead of the sun, and they're like, I'm picking up the sticks, but I'm ahead of the sun because it's like at sundown Friday night or some shit like that.
Okay.
And they're like, can't catch me. I'm not doing it on the Sabbath. Like, is that not kind of cheating still?
Right. Well, I'd be very concerned also because they didn't have digital clocks and stuff back then. Like, when exactly do you consider
it's sundown.
It's
It's literally sundown.
Okay.
It's not a time. It's sundown.
Got it. So then as soon as the sun goes down, it's the next day?
As soon as the sun goes down is when the Sabbath begins. And then it's all the way through the next day. And then until that night, until the sun comes up.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So the Christians view this as a prefiguring of Jesus's critique of legalism. Like, remember when Jesus... We haven't got there yet. So
no, we haven't. Yeah,
no.
I don't remember when Jesus did shit.
Well, he doesn't like legalism. There's a point where he's like in a church and he throws some people's money tables. He's like, fuck this shit, fuck these, fuck those, fuck all your legalistic shit.
Yeah, I know of something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's I should know what it's called, but I can't think of it right now.
Is Jesus getting pissed off at legalism?
Yeah.
And money.
Right.
In the church.
Sure.
All right, so chapter 8.
Yeah.
Promises of restoration. God promises restoration. Jerusalem will be secure with old and young in the streets. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And we were like,
yeah.
Don't play in the street. You're going to get run over. There will be agricultural prosperity and renewed covenantal faithfulness.
Okay.
God calls for justice and peace. And there's mourning fasts that are going to turn into joyous feastises. Many nations will come to seek God in Jerusalem. Do you remember all that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Jewish take on this chapter is it's a future fulfillment in messianic age. And Jerusalem is going to be the spiritual epicenter.
Okay.
So they do see this particular chapter as, yeah, that could happen.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're down with that.
Sure.
That looks nice.
Right.
And the Christians are like, no, it's totally nation seeking God. And that is going to be Gentiles turning to Christ because Christ. And Christy Jesus Christ. God bless America. Okay. Chapter 9. Judgment and the peaceful king. Okay, so we get judgment on Israel's enemies. Its neighbors, Syria, Phoenicia, Philistia. Remember?
Which chapter did you say we're in right now?
We're on 9.
9. So we just switched over from the first Zechariah to the second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. In Deutero or what the fuck ever.
Yeah.
Deutero Trido.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure. So.
Yep. We're good. So, remember, there was judgment on Israel's enemies, its neighbors, Syria, Phoenicia, and Philistia. And very likely, Alexander the Great's march is what we're alluding to here.
Okay.
The reference to Alexander the Great's conquest has been interpreted by Jewish scholars like Rashi, who was, I believe, the medieval times
I've heard
guy.
his name come up before, yeah.
Yeah, he's the one we most often reference.
Sure.
He says that this was very likely a retroactive prophecy, which means written after the facts.
Well, yeah.
After the events.
Right. That's why this is second Zechariah. So.
Yeah.
And almost every prophecy was written after the fact.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't, it was written with knowledge that something was probably going to happen.
Yeah. I just find it interesting that, like, even a medieval scholar is like, yeah, that clearly was after the fact. Fill in the blanks.
Right.
They played
I don't
Mad
think
Libs.
My understanding is that most biblical scholars that get into the job of studying the actual words of the Bible and the history of the Bible and all that, right?
Yeah.
Not many of them ascribe to the ideas that are out there in popular Christianity.
Right.
You know, like it's not, you can't read the book and study the book and the timelines and the words and the history and come up with the same conclusions that your general person on the street that believes in Christ believe in.
Right.
You know, it's just not possible.
I just wish that they would all go to a Bible school and read the Bible.
And I actually don't really understand why more people don't, because I'm like, if this is as strong as you claim it is to you,
why aren't you into it?
Right. You should be so fucking like, I'm into this more than you are, because I'm like, you who doesn't give a fuck what's actually in the book, your ideas are affecting me more than my studying of this Bible from a secular perspective. Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, you're taking shit away from people I love, and you don't even know what it is you don't even understand what you're doing. You don't understand what you're saying.
See, and that, like, okay, so I have a hobby. I like to write. And so I'm so into this hobby that I, like, learn everything about it. I watch YouTube videos on the craft of writing. I read writing guides. Yeah. I listen to podcasts so that I can become a better writer. I love writing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am more hardcore involved in pursuing knowledge about the craft of being a better writer than Christians are about being a better Christian.
Sure.
That's a fucking problem.
Yeah.
Your moral code is busted, yo. All right. So, The prophecy of the peaceful Messiah riding on a donkey comes, remember?
Yep.
His rule is supposed to bring global peace or whatever. But riding on a donkey was not a sign of humility in antiquity. It was actually a royal procession animal. So the text thus reflects ancient Near Eastern symbolism, not future meekness.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So, then we get the liberation and victory for Judah. Prisoners of hope will be restored. Yay! So the Jewish take on this is that this chapter refers to a future Davidic king bringing peace, not necessarily Jesus.
Right.
Some guy, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Christians are like, nope, fulfilled in Jesus' triumphal entry.
Right.
Praise Jesus. Hallelujah. God bless America.
Well, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but like the reworking of how Jesus is related to David is a stretch at best.
I cannot wait till we do that. Yeah, that's going to be fun. I can't decide if that's going to be like a between the two Old Testament and New Testament, or if it's going to be like a wait till we meet Jesus.
I think it should be a wait till we meet Jesus.
Okay.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
Because, we haven't met him yet.
We haven't met him yet. Yeah.
I still haven't found him.
Right.
All right. So chapter 10, God's care for Judah. Idolatry and poor leadership are condemned, as well they should be.
Right.
Judah will be victorious. God will gather scattered Israel from across the nations. Judah and Ephraim, the northern tribes, will be regathered and strengthened. And a second Exodus is foretold. Okay. The Jewish people, I don't really recall reading it that way.
I don't recall that either.
But that is apparently the way we were supposed to have read that. Okay. Now, the Jewish take on this is that it's an eschatological hope for full return of the exiled tribes.
Got it.
So they do hope that...
I feel like we did talk about that maybe a little bit.
We did. Yeah. They do hope that those guys come back someday.
Sure.
And the Christians often view this as often spiritualized as the church composed of Jews and Gentiles together, and the conversion of the Jews to Christianity.
Of course. I mean, you've got to
everything is about
that, right?
God bless America.
Yeah.
Okay. And I only keep saying that because the Jesus America is like the strongest Jesus. Of all the Jesuses I know that I've ever heard of.
He's got the most guns.
He's got the most guns. He's got the loudest bitches with the most makeup and the biggest hair. And the boys have the biggest dicks, for sure, sure. Yeah. So American Jesus is the one we should all be most afraid of. He wants to stick his boot up people's asses.
Yeah.
For that one song or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah. That's why I say God bless America. Because American... Yes. Very tongue-in-cheek because anyways... So, chapter 11, the rejected shepherd. Remember, this is where he starts doing puppets.
Yeah.
Finger puppets. Yeah. So, there's an allegory of the two staffs, favor and union, or peace and harmony. And those staffs, they get broken. Womp, womp. There's a lament for the coming judgment of corrupt leaders.
Okay. All right.
The staff's favor and union being broken actually reflects northern and southern tribal division, or a break between priests and the populace. It's a national allegory, not a religious take, actually.
Sure.
So, fuck the whole Christian take on it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, generally, I can say that pretty much about every take that they take. So.
I was just letting you know, no, the Jewish people actually have a say about this.
Right, right.
Then we get to the good shepherd being rejected by the people. Aw, sad puppet eyes. Zechariah enacts the role of a rejected shepherd all by myself.
Yeah.
He is paid 30 pieces of silver.
Which is an insult.
It's an insult.
Right.
The coins are then thrown to the potter.
Right.
The 30 pieces of silver, as you said, is an insult because this was the value of a slave accidentally gored by an ox. Not just a slave, but a slave gored by an ox.
Okay.
Okay, and that's from Exodus chapter 21.
It's very odd that would be an amount of money that is known widely as being not good.
Yeah.
You guys just know off the top of your head how much slave that's gored by an ox costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not weird at all.
And the Christians picked it up and ran with it, and they forgot to check the asterisk. They didn't check the footnote, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know."
Right? Yeah.
Oh, we thought our 30 was referencing this 30. We didn't know this 30 was referencing.
Right.
Oh, we didn't read that book. God damn it!
Didn't study it.
No.
They might have read it. They didn't study it.
I didn't study it out. No. So Zechariah throwing it to the potter is an act of protest. Christians say that it's a prediction of like a foreshadowing betrayal, the betrayal to come, when Jesus, because he is betrayed for 30 pieces of silver.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you didn't know that? Oh my God, I gave you spoilers.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. The dude that turns him in.
Yeah.
Is one of his friends.
Judas.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. He's his friend. And Jesus is like, "You're totally going to turn me in." And he's like, "I won't." And he's like, "You will." And he's like, "I won't." And he's like, "You will." And he's like, "No." And then some guys are like, "Here's 30 pieces." And he's like, "I will." You're so right. Yeah. And so then that is a callback to this.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Got it.
They just didn't
According to
know.
them.
Well, they wrote it so that it would be a callback. It's a callback either way because they made it be a callback.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but this here, as we're reading it today, is not a prediction of what is to come.
Right. Obviously.
Yeah.
No, I feel like when we get into the New Testament and start reading it after having read the whole Old Testament, we're going to be like, "Oh my God, seriously?"
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
You didn't even try.
Right.
Yeah. Like, you didn't know we were going to have, like, access to the whole thing, did ya? You're so silly.
I mean,
and cute.
this was guarded by elites.
I know.
Thousands of years ago.
It's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We saw all your little secrets." So, prophecy of a worthless shepherd who will abuse the flock. This represents failed leadership. Okay. The Jewish people read this as a symbolic drama about failed leadership and divine judgment. The end. Nothing more.
Right.
Of course, the Christians see this as a prophecy of Judas's betrayal.
Right.
Which we already said.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, chapter 12. We have Jerusalem's final battle and mourning. The nations will besiege Jerusalem, but the city will become an immovable rock. God's going to defend that rock, though. Remember, we've got cups and rocks and rocks and cups.
Yeah.
A spirit of grace and repentance falls. The people will mourn for the one they have pierced.
I'm sorry,
the
what?
one they have pierced. We have pierced you.
Pierced.
You have been pierced.
Stabbed.
Pierced.
Yeah. Got it. Sorry, the way you said it, I couldn't tell what you were saying.
I was saying it with an accent, but it didn't come out good.
Yeah, it didn't.
I don't have good accent. So in the Hebrew, this could be collective. They will mourn him whom they have pierced. Okay. Or it could refer to a killed political leader like Josiah.
Right.
Or a priestly martyr, not necessarily a Messiah.
Right.
Okay. Talmudic interpretations sometimes read this as a failed or fallen messianic candidate rather than a triumphant one.
Okay.
The Septuagint sometimes diverges from this very sharply.
Okay. Right.
And, it's the Greek one from early days.
Right.
So, here's an example. In Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10, the Septuagint reads, "They shall look upon me because they have mocked," removing the pierced word entirely. Showing how fluid these texts were even before Christianity.
Right.
They will look upon me because they have mocked.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's the way they read it.
Yeah.
Those Greeks.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that puts a whole new spin on
that. Ain't Christ.
No.
I mean, Christ was mocked, but that.
Sure. And I'm sure that people twist it that way too. Like, they're like, he was mocked and pierced. So
either way,
whichever way you see it, it's gonna be him.
Right. But I'm just like, but they didn't see it as the way you're reading it, though.
Right.
So fuck off. All right. So again, the Jewish take could be that the pierced one could refer to a slain leader or collective guilt as a whole, the whole nation. Sure. It's not interpreted messianically. It's just not. That's not the way they read it.
Right.
And of course, the Christians see this as a direct prophecy of Jesus' crucifixion. election.
Of course.
Of course.
I mean, always.
Always. God bless America.
That's from here until we get to the New Testament. And
Yes.
it's all Jesus from here on out.
It's Jesus all the way down.
Yeah.
All right, chapter 13, cleansing and purging. Oh, finally. There's a fountain for cleansing sin, and it's going to be opened. This fountain coming down a mountain. You know?
Yeah.
Idolatry and false prophecy will be abolished. False prophets will be exposed and shamed. The
Okay.
shepherd is struck. The flock will scatter, but a remnant will be refined through fire and restored.
That's right.
Always
This
with
is
the
where
remnant.
he killed off 2/3 of his own people.
Where he will kill two
Will
thirds.
kill them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Will have done.
Yeah. But we saved him a couple chapters ago.
Yeah.
And so I don't really like, this is why the Old Testament to me is so hard to fucking follow. I'm like, are we killing them today or saving them? I don't know which one we're doing.
Wolf.
But if you could just like make up your mind and stick with one, that would be great.
That would be great. Thanks. Yeah. So the Jewish take on this is that it's symbolic of national purification and communal suffering. Okay.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. The Christians say Jesus quotes Zechariah chapter 13, verse 7 before his arrest, interpreting himself as the shepherd. I'm like, does he? That's convenient.
Okay.
Yeah, I quote things all the time. I guess I can just announce I'm that person because I quoted it.
Yeah.
I guess that's how that works.
Yep.
All right, bringing it home. Chapter 14, the day of the Lord.
The day of the Lord.
Yeah.
On that day.
On that day.
Yeah.
Nations will attack Jerusalem. And that's where we are today.
This is new. This is something that's never happened before in the Bible.
I know. Nations are attacking Jerusalem now. Right now.
I mean, they are.
I know.
So
that's why the Christians are so excited.
Right.
They are right now.
No, it's always
coming.
It's always the end. It's always rapture. It's always the end of the world.
Yes.
That's always the thing that's happening.
The city will then be divinely delivered when God splits the Mount of Olives to deliver his people. Remember?
Yep.
Cosmic changes will signal the Messiah's return, his reign.
Okay.
Living waters, as opposed to the dead ones, will flow from the temple in Jerusalem.
Okay.
And enemies will be struck by plague, and Judah plunders their wealth. Judah will plunder their wealth.
What strikes me about this is that I don't want a tragedy to happen, right? I don't want something horrible, to happen to a lot of people. But let's just say something did, right? We would have to spend an inordinate amount of time discussing the religious implications of that thing that happened and how it can be tied to this end time prophecy or that end time prophecy. And that would be all we could talk about for
the next 10 years.
Yeah. And it's like, no, something awful just happened to humans.
Right.
Let's just deal with it on the level that it is and not tie your fantastical beliefs into this and make this something more than what it was. Yeah. It was terrible. Humans did it or whatever, or it was a natural disaster, whatever the case may be. It's terrible, and let's just leave it at that.
Right. So you'll recall that when it talked about the plague, that it was like their skin falling off and shit like that.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, sounds like radiation from nuclear fallout. And you were like, calm your tits.
Maybe not. Right.
Yeah. I just want to make another note here that the plague that makes eyes rot in their sockets, which that's the wording that's used, is graphic apocalyptic imagery reminiscent of ancient war curses or even proto-biological warfare fears.
Okay.
So they were using that kind of language back then.
Okay. So it was something that made... It was something people feared back. Like, that was something...
It was a common
Like, we feared
fear.
nuclear war. They feared this type of thing happening to people on large scales.
Yeah. Because think about, like... Okay, in the best zombie shows, right? In zombie movies, right?
Yeah.
You see a group of survivors use zombies as a tool to infect other people, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So they would have used illnesses like leprosy was huge in the Bible, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so they would have used that as a weapon, like a bioweapon,
right,
to infect others. And so it was like a real fear.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's deeply mythic and nationalistic, and something that we see in a lot of the literature from that time period.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all nations will be required to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, or they will face divine judgment. The requirement for all nations to celebrate, however, has led some scholars to believe this was written to assert Jewish cultic superiority during a time of religious pluralism under Persian/Greek rule.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I just thought that was so interesting. Like, you ain't Jewish if you ain't celebrating.
Right.
God gonna get you. Right? So, holiness will pervade all of life. Even common items will be sacred, as holy to the Lord, all caps, will be inscribed on everything. Okay, so the phrase on the bells of the horses, holy to Yahweh, mimics the high priest's headplate inscription from Exodus. And so this means that it's extending holiness to even animals, which was a radical democratization of sacredness. Like, to pass it on to even animals was a really fucking big deal.
Got it.
The Jewish take on this chapter is that it's an apocalyptic vision of Messianic age. Jerusalem becomes the center of global justice and worship. And the Christian view, of course, is that this is seen as the second coming imagery fulfilled in Christ's return and millennial reign. Okay, and so that brings us home. I've just got a few more points I want to make.
Okay.
We've got the pierced one, the branch, and the shepherd, right? These are not explicitly messianic in the Hebrew Bible. Like, I just want to make sure I reiterate all of these phrases. Okay. These terms were reinterpreted post-temple to mean Christian-y things.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's not how they were meant when they were written.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So apocalyptic themes echo other late Second Temple texts like Daniel and parts of Isaiah.
Okay. Yeah.
So this isn't the only place. It's just the loudest.
Got it.
Okay. Jewish readings emphasize national restoration, ethical revival, and universal justice rather than individual salvation. So that's the way the Jewish interpretation of this book as a whole would go.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Zechariah shifts from prophecy to apocalyptic, which is a transition that we also saw back in Daniel. I don't remember it really well, but there was a note that makes me want to go back and like see what I said about it at the time.
Yeah.
This genre blend shows how prophecy was evolving under empire, which I thought that was so interesting because Daniel was not written entirely like long before this.
Right.
And so,
well, there was a lot of things happening at this time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there was a lot of forward movement with humanity in general and societies and cultures. And,
I mean, we remember we did that deep dive on Greece.
Yeah.
Like, it's Greek, baby.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a very robust portion of history.
It really is.
So
humanity was just booming.
Yeah.
Every which way. So reading this from that lens and seeing it from the geopolitical stance, how they changed their writing tone even in the same book, is amazing. To me. Another point is that Zechariah reuses motifs and language from earlier prophets, like I mentioned, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah, sometimes almost word for word.
Sure.
So some scholars see this as intentional literary collage, but other people say that it lacks originality. And I'm like, this is how they did. It doesn't bug me.
I mean, it wasn't a great piece of, it's not great literature.
No,
right?
and it wasn't meant to be.
And it's a collection of ideas and thoughts and people's takes on religion
and history and
and
tracking and laws and
you
measurements.
Put that all into one ancient book, you're not going to get great literature.
No.
You're going to get what we have. So.
No, and they didn't realize that we would be studying it thousands of years later.
Right.
They might have recorded it differently.
Maybe, but I don't think that it wasn't even. It's not like they were writing a book. They were writing a journal. They were writing a speech. They were writing a thought. And these things all got collected and rewritten and rehashed and redone and translated and now we have the Bible. Like now we have what we have, but it wasn't ever originally anything.
Right.
It was just a bunch of different thoughts and ideas.
And somebody went around and picked them all up and stapled them all together.
Right. Because, initially this started as a, word of mouth, idea. Oral. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. And it got handed down through ages and ages and ages before it ever got written on any pieces of paper.
Sure.
So a lot of it, not some of the prophets and whatever, but
No, I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Concepts like divine surveillance, like the chariots and the horsemen, cosmic dualism, and purification fires show some affinity with Zoroastrian ideas that were prevalent in Persian-ruled Judah.
Yeah.
So their religion and politics was totally influencing everything that was happening to these people, by these people, around these people, and with these people.
And there's still some ideas of Zoroastrianism, and I think we talked about this before too, that are still prevalent in Christianity and stuff. Such. So.
Yep. Final thought is that apocalyptic imagery reflects national trauma, not just future hope, which is something that I said earlier on.
Right. And I think it's more that than anything else. Really.
Yeah. To me, that summarizes what this whole book was about. Yeah. And pretty much says it all,
Sure. It's only something else because people decided to take it a different way.
Yeah.
That's why we are where we are. Mm-hmm. And whatever. Yeah. It's where we are.
It's where we are. It's not good, guys. It's not good. God bless America.
All right. Well, is that all you got for us on Zechariah then?
I think that's more than enough.
So that is the wrap up for Zechariah, which means that hopefully we'll be back soon with the
You're Always Wrong
or Contradictions episode. And then is that the last thing we have?
That's the last thing we have.
That'll be it for Zechariah.
Yeah, that'll be it for Zechariah.
Yeah.
And then we will begin the final book of the Old Testament official.
Yeah.
Which is Malachi.
Well, why don't we try to get the I'm Always Wrong, the Contradictions episode out this weekend, and then we can start a new week.
I know.
In the new book.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do that. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we got for today.
Yep.
So thank you for joining us as always, and we will be back soon with the Contradictions episode.
And congratulations on finishing up another book of the Bible, guys.
Yeah. No, this is exciting. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, wife, I guess that's the end?
But husband, that's just sad.
It doesn't have to be. We are on lots of social media platforms like Twitter. Our handle there is sacrilegious_D.
For D's nuts.
Oh my God. Stop doing that. Anyway, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. There's a link to all of our social media sites at our website.
Ooh, we have a website?
Yeah, it's sacrilegiousdiscourse.com, where you can also find a link to our merch shop.
We have a merch shop?
Yep. We have podcast-themed clothing, mugs, notebooks, and more, as well as an atheist and science-themed products.
Wow, our fans should really go check that out right now.
Definitely. They can get in touch with us by sending an email to sacrilegiousdiscourse@gmail.com. But before they do that, we could really use some help.
Oh yeah? With what?
Well, it's not free running the podcast, and we need some financial support in order to get better equipment, which will free up time so we can concentrate on our podcast and our fans.
Okay, so what should they do?
Head over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse and sign up as a contributor on our podcast. Supporters there receive additional bi-weekly episodes that we record just for our Patreon members for as little as $2 a month.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using.
And Apple Podcast reviews help us out tremendously.
Like and subscribe, leave an Apple review, join us on Twitter, support us on Patreon. That's a lot of instructions. Don't forget to say thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.